Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. All right, listen, I'm really going to try hard not to sing my intros from now on, but why not? I'm literally sitting at home by myself in my living room today, actually, instead of the basement. Usually I record these in the basement because it's the quietest place in the house. So I try to make it, as clear and, professional as possible. But you remember, as my normal disclaimer I give before all of my audiobooks, this is my highly unprofessional audiobook series I'm bringing to you for free during COVID chaos to help my mind escape and to help your mind escape. So you're going to hear things like my dogs and cars probably because we live on a busy road. And you know what? It is what it is. I'm doing my best. Do I wish that I had a professional setup with a soundproof room and a microphone and not just my phone that I have to clear every single app off of every time I record a story just so that I have the memory to upload it? Yes, of course I do. But this is real life. And so I'm in my living room sitting on the floor at my coffee table with my laptop that only works like 13.3% of the time and my cell phone that doesn't have enough memory to do these stories in the first place. But that's okay because I always figure out a way around it. So on that note, I don't know if you've noticed or not. I don't know how many people actually even click on the description on any video, really. Unless you're watching something where like you want more information, like a news story, right? You're watching, you're like, oh my God, I wonder what happened. Are they okay? So then you have to click on the description to find out if there's a link or something you can read. Or is it just me? I don't know. It might just be me. I don't know. So anyway, in the description link of all my videos, I added, I added a link that says, tip your storyteller. And the reason I did that, and I started these off as a service that I always wanted to do for free, and I want to continue to do it for free. But the truth of the matter is, look, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and while I might be getting a job here soon, it's very difficult for me to work because of it, or it has been very difficult for me to work because of the whole COVID thing and the kids staying from home from school and so on and so forth. But they have gone back to school full-time as of this Monday. It is currently Thursday or Wednesday, some day of the week. So that's why I'm actually upstairs instead of downstairs, because I have two dogs. I have a 14-year-old hound dog who will just incessantly howl if I go downstairs and nobody's up here with him. So, I tried, if you can't tell. I already went down once this morning, and I actually tried yesterday too. And once the hound dog gets to howling, then the little dog gets set off, and he's the whole time. So it's so frustrating and so pointless. So with all of that being said, just bear with me. You're going to hear cars pass by, especially if like a motorcycle or a semi goes by. It's so freaking loud. We're pretty close to the road too. So, it shakes the house. You can hear, like if I'm laying in bed at night and a truck goes by, it'll rattle the pictures hanging on the wall above the bed. It is what it is, all right? I'm a realist. I'm being completely transparent with you. I'm not going to pretend to be some professional audiobooker. I am a writer and a mom and a mom of dogs, and you're going to hear all of that. Blah, blah, blah. So anyway, continuing on. This story that I wrote for you yesterday, actually, and tried recording, as I said several times, is called Descent. It's written by myself, Shelley Moore, from my website, limitlessstimulus.com. Are you listening or not? I said as I punched David's shoulder. Fuck, Lee, yeah, I'm listening, he replied as he turned the volume of the car stereo down. What have I said so far then, huh? I asked. You were dreaming about being on a bus or some shit, he replied as he lit the end of the joint he had just painstakingly rolled with a precision that only a lifelong pothead can manage. Jesus, is that all you heard? I don't even know why I bother, I replied. Sorry, Lee, I was concentrating. I'll listen now. You have my full attention, he said as he shifted his body in the driver's seat to face me. So I'm on a bus with about 20 other people. We're on a highway, and the highway we're driving on is like 100 feet up in the air, and the other highways snake unapologetically below it. It makes zero sense, but that's where we are, okay? So the driver suddenly loses control of the bus and it crashes through the barrier and it's propelled forward as if it were flying instead of gravity simply pulling it down to the earth below because physics, of course, have no place within a dream. So I'm standing in the center row of the bus with my hands gripping the leather seats while all the others cower and cover their heads as if their delicate little hands will protect them from the 100-foot free fall and explosive impact of the 10,000-pound vehicle contacting the hard surface. I grip the leather seats and I try to maintain my balance, and the front of the bus clips the edge of another roadway as we fall, and it sends the bus spiraling. I feel as if I might get sick, and then I hear someone behind me do just that. A beautiful Asian family sits 2 seats ahead of where I stand. A petite young mother holds her small daughter and infant son tightly, and she prays. An elderly gentleman wearing a flat cap pulls rosary beads from his pocket and holds them to his heart as he prays. The bus driver appears to still be attempting to steer the bus to safety, although our demise is completely unavoidable, but her hands continue to grip the steering wheel tightly. Time slows, and I'm able to look out the window to my right just long enough to see that we're headed for the water. I think maybe there's hope, and I start to quickly visualize how I might be able to grab the children after we've hit the water, and I think about how I could maybe crawl out of an open window with them and swim to the shore, but my grounded mind quickly reminds me of the force of the bus hitting the water from a 100-foot fall would be just as detrimental as if we were to hit cement. And just before we hit, I close my eyes. It wasn't a conscious decision, it was more of a reflex or an instinctual move. Maybe, subconsciously, I didn't want to risk seeing what would surely be the gruesome death of the 19 fragile human bodies smashing violently into the ceiling of the bus upon impact. I was as prepared as I suppose anyone can be for such an unexpected death. My eyes were closed tightly, and my knuckles were white from gripping the seats, when suddenly everything went eerily quiet. I don't dare open my eyes just yet because I think it must have happened. The bus must have crashed into the water surface, and I've left my earthly body, but I'm just not quite ready to see what or where it was that I currently stood. I'm still able to think clearly, which means I didn't simply cease to exist, so that's sort of a relief. And with my eyes closed tightly, I released my grip on the bus's seats, and I can feel and I can even hear the leather beneath my fingers as I loosen my grip. I can smell the cologne of the old man in the flat cap 2 seats ahead. But then I wake up. I've had this dream every single night for almost as far back as I can remember, David. What do you think it means? He asked. I don't know, but I've been reading a lot about lucid dreaming, so I'm hoping one night as I'm dreaming to realize that I'm dreaming and see if I can interact within the dreamscape, I explained. Hey, do you want another hit? David asked as he held what was left of the joint up for me. I carefully took it from between his fingers and took a long, medicinal drag, exhaling the silver smoke into the car's cabin. Turn on the car for a sec so I can roll this window down a crack. We aren't hotboxing this shit, I said. Man, you dream some crazy shit, Lee, he says. If I nap during the day, I dream the same dream. If I doze off on the couch for just a minute, I dream it. It's like my subconscious is broken or some shit. I laughed nervously. Maybe it's some past life shit, David suggested. I've considered that too, I replied. I don't know. I just feel like maybe if I try the lucid dreaming bullshit, I might be able to pick up more detail. Like, I don't know, maybe it means something. I don't know why I would dream the same damn thing every night for months upon months, if not years, if it wasn't somehow important, you know? He nodded in agreement as he began to rub my leg seductively. Not now, David. Can't you see I'm lost in the middle of an existential crisis? Orgasms are good for headaches. Maybe they're also good for existential crises, he said as he began kissing my neck. Whatever the fuck that word is. Dude, I mean it, I said as I pushed him away gently. Not tonight. Can you just take me home? David held my face in one hand and kissed my lips slowly, lovingly, and after biting my bottom lip, he said, Sure thing, sweet tits. Real classy, I laughed. I'm all class, Lee. You know this. he said as he withdrew his hand to pull his seatbelt down and fasten it. You can crash on my couch again tonight, I offered. I'll take you up on that. Work is a hell of a lot closer to your place than mine, David replied as he shifted the car into gear. Just before we hit, I closed my eyes. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was more of a reflex or an instinctual move. Maybe subconsciously, I didn't want to risk seeing what would surely be the gruesome death of 19 fragile human bodies smashing violently into the ceiling of the bus upon impact. I was as prepared as I suppose anyone can be for such an unexpected death. My eyes were closed tightly and my knuckles were white from gripping the seats when suddenly everything went eerily quiet. I don't dare open my eyes just yet because I think it must have happened. The bus must have crashed into the water surface and I've left my earthly body, but I'm just not quite ready to see what or where it was that I currently stood. I'm still able to think clearly, which means I didn't simply cease to exist, so that's sort of a relief. With my eyes still closed tightly, I release my grip on the bus's seats. I can feel and even hear the leather beneath my fingers as I loosen my grip. I can smell the cologne of the old man in the flat cap 2 seats ahead. A handful of seconds pass, and I realize I was within the dream again, and I hadn't awoken where I usually do. I'm still on the bus. Realizing I've been holding my breath, I inhale deeply, count to 3 within my mind, and summon the courage to open my eyes. 1, 2, 2.5, 2 3/4. I open my eyes and am astonished to discover not only am I still on the bus, but time has completely stopped around me. The bus is tilted downward and the front of it has entered the water as waves, frozen solid in time, crash around the front windows. The bus driver still holds tightly to the steering wheel. I can see her reflection in the mirror above her, and her eyes are wide and hold a look of desperation that's nearly indescribable. The young mother clings tightly to her children, and the old man in the flat cap sits frozen in time with his rosary beads wrapped around his wrinkled, sun-spotted, praying hands as 2 tears cling to his wrinkled cheeks, having been stopped along their descent by the sudden halting of time and space. Behind me, the back door of the bus points toward the sky and the highway above from which we had violently departed. The only sounds are that of my own making, my breath, my heartbeat, a slight ringing in my ears. The adrenaline spike within me begins to subside, and I immediately vomit into the seat to my left, where a 20-something man in a black hoodie sits with the hood pulled over his head and his knees drawn up tightly to his chest, his face buried so that I could not see it. I apologized to him, but of course received no response, as he is also stopped within time. I realized then that I seemed to be the only thing not frozen in time. I'm afraid to move a muscle, afraid if I do, time will resume and all of these innocent people and myself will likely die. Or maybe we've already died. Maybe I've already died. But I remind myself I'm just dreaming, but it doesn't feel like a dream. It feels every bit as real as sitting with David in the car at the park just hours earlier. I begin to panic, and my breathing becomes rapid as my heart beats so forcefully I feel it may very well jump out of my chest. I close my eyes and consciously slow my breathing back to a somewhat normal rhythm. Once my heart rate calmed as much as I'd be able to calm it considering the given situation, I decide I don't have much of a choice other than to move. So I take an extremely careful step to my right, and my heart begins pounding rapidly within my chest again in the anticipation of what might happen. But when nothing does, I take another step and then carefully kneel on the seat and lower the window beside me. I remind myself I'm only dreaming. I'm only dreaming. This is only a dream, Leanne. I stick my right arm out of the window and feel the chilled water with the tips of my fingers. As my fingers touch the water, it becomes fluid once again momentarily, but then quickly settles and freezes back in time. It's at this point I begin to think, maybe I can leave the bus and swim safely to shore. Maybe this is an opportunity to survive this awful disaster given to me by whoever grants wishes and incredibly vivid, reoccurring dreams in the sky above. Both the young mother with her babies and the elderly man had been praying and are, in fact, frozen in time in the midst of their desperate prayers. And I briefly think, why on earth would I, and not them, be provided such an opportunity? So I think, maybe I can save them. Maybe I can take them one by one safely to the shore, after which time will resume as normal and there will be 0 fatalities, other than that of an old, likely past its prime anyway, bus. I used the seats to help me walk and sort of climb my way up to the back door of the bus. The latch took some muscle to open, but I was able to lift it and fling the heavy door wide open. Success. With my head out of the rear of the bus, I scanned my surroundings. The shoreline was about a football field away, and we were in what would normally be in incredibly treacherous waters, but time had allowed the rapids and waves to freeze. I can do this, I thought. I sat on my butt and scooted down to the seat where the mother and her children were. I pried the mother's desperate grip from her daughter, who appeared to be about 4 years old, and I carried her up the aisle to the open back door of the school bus. She likely only weighs about 30 pounds, but I questioned whether I'd be able to swim while carrying her. No time for questions, and quite frankly, no one's going to answer them, so instead of wasting more precious time, I leapt from the school bus with her in my arms. The water was downright frigid, and I felt my limbs stiffen in automatic response, but adrenaline kicked in once again, giving me superhero strength that I needed to swim with this child back to the shore. Kicking and punching my way through the time-frozen waves felt a bit like kicking and punching my way through the icy top of a frozen lake. It felt as if I were swimming through pudding, and the physical exertion my body needed to endure in order to push through the water was far more taxing than I had anticipated. I had a thought cross my mind. What if, since the child is frozen in time also, she wouldn't affect the water as I do? What if when the child touches the water, it remains frozen in time and therefore solid in nature? I stopped swimming for a moment and positioned the girl so that I could use her little hand to touch a part of the time-frozen wave beside us. The water did not liquefy with her touch. Very carefully, and with knots in my stomach the size of watermelons, I held my breath and pushed the girl away from my own body and onto a time-frozen wave in front of us. The exertion pushed my body underwater, and I carefully resurfaced, gasping for air, but the girl remained frozen in time and completely unharmed, laying peacefully atop the water's surface. I yelled, "Thank you," to whoever the cosmic wish granter may be, and I made my way back to the bus. I used the windows along the side of the bus as a ladder of sorts and climbed my way up to the protruding rear end of the bus and climbed back inside the hatch. My fingers were numb from the cold water and weren't quite working at their peak capacity, but I managed to peel the mother's fingers away from her infant and again jumped from the back hatch of the bus into the frigid water below. I immediately checked the baby to make sure he hadn't aspirated any of the water into his frail little lungs, but quickly realized being time frozen also meant they weren't breathing, so I had nothing to fear in that department anyway. I swam to where I had left his sister several meters away and set him gently beside her, careful not to touch the water with my own hands. Just as I turned to face the bus, time suddenly resumed without warning, and the bus crashed hard into the water's surface, sending already turbulent waves 10 feet high around me. I immediately lost sight of the little girl and boy, and I struggled with everything I had within me to stay above water. It's just a dream. I'm only dreaming. I'll wake up soon. No need to panic. It's just a dream, Leanne. But God, it feels so damn real. I feel my body's desperate need for air as I'm dragged again and again under the water's surface, and I feel the burning in my lungs as they fill with icy water. I feel my body dying. I awake, gasping desperately for air, but safely within the confines of my own bed. David, having heard my apparent screams, came running into my bedroom. "Are you okay? Was it the dream again?" he asked. "Yes," I said as I caught my breath. It was the dream, but I went further, David. I tried to rescue the babies, but I failed. I failed. I began to cry heavy, ugly, chest-heaving, mournful sobs, and David could only hold me and say, "Leanne, it was just a dream. Calm down. Take a deep breath. You're fine. You're home. I'm here." "It's more than just a dream, David. Damn it, I can't explain it. It's more than just a damn dream," I said with frustration as I threw the blankets off my body and walked into the bathroom in my t-shirt and underwear. "Where are you going?" David asked. "I'm triple dosing my sleep meds, if you must know, David," I snapped. "Triple dosing? Lee." Stop." I cut him off, holding my finger up. "Before you ask, no, the sleep meds are not what's causing the dreams. I haven't taken them in almost a year. In fact, I've often wondered how long these dreams have been trying to come to me, but the meds might have been preventing them from coming." I dumped 6 small, round, white pills into my hand from the bottle, then tossed them into my mouth. "And quite frankly, David, I want to get to the bottom of this so I can go back to living my damn life like a normal person," I said as I filled my glass with tap water and then used it to help swallow the pills. "But not tonight, David. Tonight I sleep. No reoccurring fucking death dream." I climbed back into bed, pulling the covers up to my cheeks, turned to my side and said, "Good night again, David. I'll see you in the morning." David walked around the side of the bed and leaned over to gently kiss my forehead and then made his way back to the living room. "Night, Lee." Just before we hit, I closed my eyes. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was more of a reflex or an instinctual move. Maybe subconsciously I didn't want to risk seeing what would surely be the gruesome death of 19 fragile human bodies smashing violently into the ceiling of the bus upon impact. I was as prepared as I suppose anyone can be for such an unexpected death. My eyes were closed tightly and my knuckles were white from gripping the seats, when suddenly everything went eerily quiet. I don't dare open my eyes just yet because I think it must have happened. The bus must have crashed into the water surface and I've left my earthly body, but I'm just not quite ready to see what or where it was that I currently stood. I'm still able to think clearly, which means I didn't simply cease to exist, so that's sort of a relief. With my eyes still closed tightly, I released my grip on the bus's seats. I can feel and even hear the leather beneath my fingers as I loosened my grip. I can smell the cologne of the old man in the flat cap 2 seats ahead, and I realize I'm inside the dream again. I open my eyes and run to the back of the bus, open the latch, and fling the heavy door open. I yell, "Help! Can anyone help us?" But the only sounds, once again, are that of my own making. I pinch my arm as hard as I possibly can in an attempt to wake myself, to no avail. I scream in the face of the mother desperately gripping her children to wake up, to no avail. I kick the elderly man in the shin and I yell for him to wake up, also to no avail. The man has a pocket knife just barely visible in his front pant pocket, so I take it, open it, and press it against the skin of my inner arm. I thought the pain would surely cause me to awaken, so I pierced my skin, and blood began to ooze down my arm and drip onto the floor beside me. I threw the knife across the floor of the bus and cried out in frustration and pain. "David!" I yelled, pleading within the dream for my boyfriend to hear me. "David, wake me up! David!" I sobbed as blood dripped onto the floor from my fingertips. "David, please!" I screamed again. I slumped down into the floor beside the elderly man with my back against the seat in front of us, and I wept. Someone please help me." I cried quietly as I held my face in my bloodied hands. Just then, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Startled, I looked up to see the elderly man staring back at me with a warm smile. With his left hand on my shoulder, he offered his rosary beads to me with his right. Shocked by this strange turn of events, I reluctantly held my trembling, bloody hand up to take the rosary from him, and the very second I touched them, time began to rewind. The bus shot back up into the air away from the water as I stared at the man, wide-eyed and completely bewildered. What's happening? I asked through trembling lips. Wait for it, the man said gently. I looked around the edge of the seat behind me, and the young mother, still holding her infant son, and her daughter were turned around in their seats, standing and staring right back at me. I held onto the seat just as the bus spiraled violently. The elderly man placed his hand on my shoulder once again and said, "Just wait for it." The bus hit the edge of the other highway it had hit on the way down. The nausea-inducing spiraling finally ceased, and shortly after, the bus was back on the highway it had been on before the crash transpired. We were now driving in reverse as time continued to rewind, and the man took his hand from my shoulder, gave me a wink, and then picked up the newspaper on the seat beside him and began reading it. I stood, my knees weakened and wobbly, and the young mother and her children were back in their seat, facing forward, as though nothing had happened. The young girl played a game on her mother's cell phone, and the mother rocked and shushed her crying infant. I could see the driver's reflection in the mirror above her, and it appeared she was talking to herself. I walked cautiously to the front of the bus to see what she was saying, and hopefully to discover what could have possibly caused the crash in the first place. As I approached her, I noticed 2 of her fingers were missing on her right hand, and she had a nasty black eye, and the cheek beneath it was grossly swollen. She was mumbling something, a sentence or a phrase it seemed over and over, and didn't seem to notice my presence whatsoever, so I inched closer. In fact, I got so close I could feel her breath on my cheek before I could make out what it was she was saying. She said, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. Don't think I will. I'm not weak. You're weak. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. Don't think I won't. I will. I'm not weak. You're weak." Every tiny hair on my flesh stood on end, hearing those words leaving her lips, knowing what she was about to cause. "Who are you talking to?" I asked her quietly so as not to startle her. She just kept repeating those same words over and over and over again. Did you crash this bus on purpose?" I asked. The driver looked at me, but only for a split second, and then focused again on the road ahead. "You did. You crashed this fucking bus on purpose, you crazy bitch. Who are you talking to?" "He says he'll beat the baby out of me. He says I'm too weak to abort her, but I'm not weak. He's weak. I'm not weak. He's weak. I'm not weak. He's weak. I'll show him who's stronger. I'll show him," the woman said. The look in her eyes was terrifying, despondent yet furious, vacant yet powerful. I watched as she tightened her grip on the steering wheel in front of her and pushed her foot down on the accelerator. I grabbed the steering wheel with every fiber of strength I had within me, and I screamed for help from the other passengers. The elderly man was the only one to get up from his seat and approach us. "What can I do?" he shouted. "Pull her out of the seat, quickly!" I shouted at him, and he obliged. Thankfully, the woman was small in stature, and the man was easily able to pull her out of the driver's seat and onto the floor. The bus hit the cement barrier and sent sparks flying across the highway, but I was eventually able to bring it to a full stop. And once I did, every passenger stood and gave me a round of applause. As I stood from the driver's seat and turned to face the passengers, the driver now stood beside the elderly man, smiling warmly and clapping along. "I don't understand," I said, confused. The young mother smiled kindly and said, "You saved us. Now you can die peacefully." "What?" I said, shocked. The little girl said, "We died that day, the day the bus crashed." I felt my knees weaken, and I grabbed a hold of the seat in front of me for balance. "I'm so confused. This is a dream," I reassured myself. The elderly man approached me once again, gently placing his warm hand on my shoulder. "No, honey, this is no dream. She's right, we died that day. Every last one of us, and we all went up to that place in the sky we're supposed to go when we leave this place, all except you," he said. "What?" I don't understand. You see, the day it happened, you did see the driver mumbling to herself, and you stood from your seat to make your way up to her. You figured out what she was saying and what she planned to do, but you were just a fraction of a second too late, honey. You wanted to save us. You tried, but it just wasn't in the cards. Tears began to fall from my eyes, and the driver approached me and hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry for what I did that day, she whispered in my ear and then kissed my cheek. My husband was a sick man, and I was a desperate woman. Desperation wipes the mind clean of common sense. I've paid for what I did that day, and I've healed. I wanted to make sure you were provided the same opportunity. Wait, just wait. This is a dream. This doesn't make sense. David! I screamed for him, desperately hoping he'd hear my screams as I lay in my bed, and he rushed to my side to shake my shoulders and wake me up. Oh, sugar. David's an old man now with kids and grandkids of his own. It took him a while to grieve over you and move on, but he eventually found love and married. He had a wonderful life. In fact, David and his wife named their firstborn daughter after you, the elderly man explained. My knees gave way, and I dropped into the seat as tears fell down my cheeks. I don't understand, I could only say. You've been so wrecked with guilt over not being able to save us that your soul's been trapped in its death state, replaying that day over and over on loop while you try to figure out how to save us. There comes a time when enough is enough, and the grand wish granter, as you call him, stepped in and decided it was time to let you save us so that your soul can move on. I'm really dead? I asked. Every single person on the bus nodded their head gently. But I thought these were dreams, and I was still living my life with David. I don't understand, I said, as I tried desperately to understand. We dream in death also, my dear. Your recent days with David were dreams created by your mind even within your death state. The mind is a fascinating, incredible, immortal thing, my dear, the man said. The woman bus driver opened the door to the school bus, and the little girl ran from her seat to grab my hand. Come on, it's time to go, she said excitedly, and we exited the bus one by one. The end.